Have you ever considered starting your own business? Well, if you've ever considered buying into a franchise, then you have tuned into the right episode. Welcome back to a new episode of the Second Act Success Career Podcast. I'm your host, career coach Shannon Russell. Today, I will be speaking with franchising expert Patrick Findaro of Visa Franchise and Vetted Biz. He is here to share his expertise on getting into the franchise world. Let's dive in and learn all about franchising from Patrick Findaro.
I think it all depends on kind of what your intentions are and how comfortable you are with taking a step back. Are you going into franchising full force and you're willing to take a step back to take a step forward? If you choose the right franchise system and say you invested $150,000 in a home care franchise, after 3-4 years, you might be at $1 million in revenue and you're making $180K, $200,000, and you could sell that business for $600K.
Yeah.
So you didn't make much money in the first year, but you're making more money 2 to 3 years in that you can lend against, you can sell, you could potentially put a day-to-day manager in place. There's a lot more opportunities, and it might be a step forward after the first 6 months, 12 months of that ramp-up period.
Are you at a crossroads in your career? Ready for a change, but you're not sure how to get there? Don't worry, we are about to produce your best life together. Welcome to the Second Act Success Podcast. I am your host, Shannon Russell. I am a former television producer turned boy mom. I left my dream job to find family balance, and in doing so, I produced my dream life. Now I am a business owner, podcaster, and career coach. My mission is to help other women like you find what they are truly meant to be doing. If you are ready to start over in your career or pivot to a new purpose, then get ready to be inspired by stories of women who have done just that. We will share advice and actionable tips to motivate you as you move along on your path. It is time to shine, so let's start producing your balanced life of abundance today. This is Second Act Success. Welcome to the podcast, Patrick Findaro. I'm so excited to have you here.
Likewise, Shannon. Thanks so much.
I'm just excited to chat with you as an expert in franchising because I am a franchisee myself. So I'm truly invested in what franchises can do for someone, especially someone new starting out, wanting to start a business and really doesn't have any idea what they're doing. So I want to get your expertise on it and talk about how you launched these two businesses of yours with your brother.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I'm sure in some experts, you're much more of an expert than I am, like in terms of operational, hiring employees, all that. But I would say together with my brother and the 40-person group that we've grown, we're experts in kind of analyzing and more on the financial side and analyzing the franchise brand performance and how that compares to different franchise brands. So you're in New Jersey. I moved from Maine, where I went to college, to New York City. And I worked on Wall Street at JP Morgan, 60, 70-hour weeks. And so my brain was just fried every day, and I really needed the weekend to relax. Discovered Miami, moved down here 11 years ago, and I worked at a information service business and then a small private equity fund that would lend money to franchises, both quick service restaurants and hospitality hotels. At that time, my brother was working at Restaurant Brands International, which owns Tim Hortons, Burger King, Firehouse Subs, and Popeyes. And we saw a niche to help foreign nationals that wanted to move to the United States through the E2 Investor Visa program in terms of identifying and analyzing franchises on their behalf. We still have that business. I split my time between Visa Franchise and now Vetted Biz. But we help over 100 families move to the U.S., finding franchises. We only consult with foreign nationals, so it's kind of a unique niche to find businesses, principally franchises, that are eligible for whatever their goals are in terms of U.S. immigration. So that's how we kind of entered the space. And Vetted Biz, our database was just the offline database for Visa franchise that we decided to put online in January 2020. And we're just constantly updating as FDDs come out, as we analyze recent sales trends for franchises, SBA loans, all different types of data sources we compile in and make it easy for those that are looking to choose a franchise, franchisees looking to maybe expand to a different brand, franchisors for competitive intelligence, as well as suppliers to understand who they should try to sell to whether it be to franchisees or to franchisors.
Wow. So we can go to Vetted Biz and you really have kind of the financials, the rankings of all different kinds of franchises to kind of find what
Definitely,
one
yeah.
might
The
be.
database has 7,000 franchises, of which every year we're able to secure FTDs for 1,500 to 2,000 of them. Essentially, those say 2,000 are the ones that are actively seeking franchisees in that calendar year. Franchise disclosure document for some brands like Blaze Pizza, for example, we have multiple years. So we're able to see how the brand has grown over the last 7 years, how the average unit volume, so average sales have grown during that same period as well. And then if they don't disclose, for example, earnings, then we're going to make an estimate based on the data that we have to give an estimate of if you own a Blaze Pizza franchise and you're an owner operator, you can expect to make this. If you own a Blaze Pizza franchise and you want to have a day-to-day manager in place, you can expect to make this.
Okay. I love that because I think franchising, people don't really understand what it is. And I think a lot of times there are two different kinds of franchises, like you just mentioned. So there might be someone who has enough money to open a McDonald's and they just want to have it be turnkey and hand it off to a manager to run. Whereas I own a Snapology franchise and that is so hands on. You really
Exactly.
don't open a Snapology and turn it over to someone. So there's two different types of people looking to enter the franchising world. And you really have to know what you're buying into.
Yeah, it's really well said. Every day or every other day, I have a friend, former colleague that asks me about franchising. And it usually starts with trying to get to how much money are you making?
Right.
And how much would someone have to pay you to work more hours? So imagine it as it's your second act. Are you going into franchising full force and you're willing to take a step back, to take a step forward? And maybe you were making $200,000 and unfortunately you were working at a tech company, there was a layoff. If you want to go into franchising, you might take a step back and for the first year not make much money. Then the second year make 100K, third year 200K, and go up from there. And then after a while, you might have to open up multiple territories, but you're creating an asset at least. If you choose the right franchise system and say you invested $150,000 in a home care franchise, after 3, 4 years, you might be at $1 million in revenue and you're making $200,000 and you could sell that business for 600K.
Yeah.
So you didn't make much money in the first year, but your time's compounding and you're making more money 2 to 3 years in. And you can lend again, so you can sell. You could potentially put a day-to-day manager in place. So I think it all depends on kind of what your intentions are and how comfortable you are with taking a step back, whether it is, your current job or going to look at other jobs. But if you're already making 200K, 250K, most likely going into franchising, you're going to have to take a step back before taking a step forward. If you're early in your career and you're making like 60K, 50K a year, there's a lot more opportunities and it might be a step forward after the first 6 months, 12 months of that ramp up period.
Right. Yeah. I am definitely the first that you mentioned, making really good money, having two little ones, and then saying, okay, I have to get out of my corporate career. I'm going to open a franchise and taking that huge hit at first. But for me, I didn't know how to operate a business. It was new to me. I was a television producer. So I said, well, you know what? I'm used to running big budgets and running huge production. I can use those skills in running a business. And that's what I did. So I felt like it was a great step into being an entrepreneur. It gave me all the tools to learn. Would you suggest that to someone who is interested in opening a business? Would you say go into franchising as opposed to taking an idea and building it from scratch on your own?
Really good question. I've started multiple businesses. One business took 2 months to break even, the other one over 2 years. So I was fine with that risk tolerance. And franchising, it's much more clear, like where there's a bell curve and your chances that it's going to take 4 months to break even, if most franchisees are taking 4 months to break even, is much clearer. Also, same with like time to open the business, break even, time to start making money to, sustain your bills. With a franchise, it's much more predictable. I think if you already have deep relationships in the industry, like for example, if you segued right away from working at a big television group to you're already getting all this inquiries about consulting gigs and you're able to just segue that to an independent production company. Awesome. You already have the clients coming in. That's what it was kind of like with Visa franchise, where I already had the clients. So
Nice.
we were able to break even in 2 months. But
Nice.
if you don't already have the clients, it's generally going to take a lot more time to open up, break even, and start making real cash flow. And that can be a big mental strain. It's nice to have these like early wins where you have money coming in and you have months where you're above, where you're actually making money. Thinking about Snapologies in the education space, but say you were going to do something very innovative in education that wasn't a franchise and you have to educate the market because that product doesn't exist
Right.
in your area, and you've got to do a huge education of why parents should sign up for your service, and it's something that's very unique, and you're going to probably spend a lot of time on the upfront education component before making money, and it can be tough as an entrepreneur if you don't get those early wins and you don't start getting cash in the first few months.
Yes, and you're so right. And with a franchise, I felt like you have that headquarters, that corporate team that is giving you the marketing material, telling you kind of what to say. And for me, there were no other Snapologies in my state of New Jersey. So I really did have to do a lot of building and educating, but I had that corporate support. I had people to go to, and I wasn't sitting in my own head all day trying to figure it out by myself. And now I've gone on to open another business completely on my own. And now I have the tools to do that. But for me back then, it was a nice little step, of just introducing me into the business world, kind of on my
Well,
own.
you brought up a good point. There's a lot of franchises like in the service space, especially with these junk businesses like 1-800 Got Junk,
Mhm.
Accelerated Waste Solutions, College Hunks, where the franchisor largely is responsible for sales and marketing.
Yeah.
And they're getting the leads, they're marketing, they're pushing. You'll do some local guerrilla marketing to try to get referrals, but in terms of content marketing, the franchisor is doing it. And they often have a call center that's booking the client for you. So as a franchisee, your job's client service and hiring, training, and firing. And it's kind of franchisor does everything that can be done virtual, where the franchisee is doing everything that needs to be local. That's a trend that I'm seeing in franchising where the franchisor is doing a lot more, even than they were, 5, 10 years ago, especially for these service type brands. And the franchisee, your marching orders are very clear. It's client service and employees. And you got
Yeah.
to focus on those two and execute those two well. And the franchisor is largely going to handle the rest.
Mhm. And that's something to bring up too. That franchisor is doing that work, but you're paying the fees. So that's something different, I think, too, with a franchise compared to opening a business on your own. You're now paying royalty fees, you're paying franchise fees, but you're getting that help as well. So I think that's just another step in your vetting process when you're looking to start a franchise is to kind of know what those fees are, to know how much support you're getting.
It's always important to ask franchisees, like, if you didn't to be with this brand, would it make sense? You're 5 years in, 10 years in to just go separate. And I talked to a home healthcare franchisee, does about $8 million in revenue, $1 million in EBITDA and earnings. And he says, no, it makes sense for me to be part of a larger brand and everything that goes together with that in terms of the referrals from the larger hospital groups, office functions that largely the franchise brand's handling. And then same thing with remedial cleaning, like clean up after like a hurricane. This franchisee, I believe, does something close to like 30 mil in sales. And he's grown that business over 25 years. So it didn't happen overnight. But even with conflict with the franchisor that him and fellow franchisees are having, he's like, no, I really want this to work. I don't want to go independent. If I go independent, it's going to drop the revenue for these reasons. So
Yeah.
it's like these are two franchisees that are making a lot of money and they are in conflict with the franchisor, but they still see the value and they don't want to go independent. They want to resolve that conflict, work through that conflict to have a better relationship, working relationship with that franchise brand because they see the value of being part of something bigger.
You bring up a good point with the conflict. I see that a lot of times. You become really close with other franchisees within your brand and you huddle together and you are a force with your franchisor of what you want, what you don't want, what's working.
but there is always room for negotiating to make sure that everyone's happy on both sides.
Hey, it's Shannon. If you are enjoying this podcast, then you will love my weekly newsletter. It's full of career advice, productivity tips, and of course, inspiring stories of women who have launched a new career that they love. Just go to secondactsuccess.co to sign up. Plus, you'll get the My Success Vision Board to help you with your 2023 planning as well. Now it's back to the episode.
Within your database, you have so many different types of franchises, and you know what to do for someone to truly vet and analyze a business before you jump in. So, what are a couple of tips that you might suggest that if someone is looking, say they want to open a home healthcare franchise, what kind of questions should they be looking at and asking at that potential franchisor?
So I wrote this book that's behind me and right here, and I don't want to, self promotion much, but it is my life's work of the last decade in the franchise space. And number one is like passion, purpose, and pay, and understanding what you want from the business. Where if you want to go into a field that is something that people all love, there's generally going to be a lot of competition and people aren't making as much money. So if you're passionate about fitness, okay, that checks one of the boxes. And maybe purpose you get from training and mentoring the personal training and mentoring the staff, and you really like that, and that gives you purpose in life, your professional life. But pay's tough, and that doesn't mean across all fitness brands, but I largely see the industries that are more appealing to people don't make as much money. First, define what you like, and then you can see that if it's like junk removal or home healthcare, a lot of employees. So after a year, you might have 30 caregivers. Second year, 60. Going on, you go to 100 to 200 plus caregivers. So if you don't like managing people, and a lot of people do not like managing people and have all that responsibility and having to worry about your insurance policy to make sure you're covered because they're going into elderly people's homes. If you don't want that, don't do that. But that is generally a pretty profitable opportunity because a lot of people overlook it and don't want to be doing that business. So that would be at like the high level. Then like the nitty gritty is what's the resale value for this business? Cost me 100K to open. What could I sell in 3 years, 4 years when the business is really stabilized and doing well? Subway, by our estimates, midpoint investment 350K. Subways are generally selling for 150K to 200,000. Subway right now in the United States in 2023, maybe with their new prototype, I don't know. That's not proven. I don't think it makes sense to open up a new Subway, but it might make sense to buy an existing one. I don't want to go back too much to the home healthcare option, but 150K investment, fourth year, fifth year in, could probably sell for 600, 800K. So that's a nice return on your time. And the resale value is there where you don't want to allocate your precious time to something that you're not getting compensated for down the line.
That resale value is something to really think about because you don't want to get to the end of your contract, your franchise contract, and just walk away like it's a car lease. You want to
Good.
be able to resell. That's your purpose if you're not going to re-sign for another 10 years. And you have incredible videos on your YouTube channel, which I definitely
Thank
want to
you.
talk about. And I was watching one just yesterday that said that 2023 is a great year to sell.
Yeah, well, I would say 2023, it could be a good year to sell depending on what you're selling, but I think it's even a better year to buy. Where startup costs have gone up, construction costs, especially if it's a physical build out. So
Right.
whether it's a restaurant, education business, anything that's not like you're servicing the client, and if it's real estate property management, it might be a better option to buy or start. It just depends on what you're looking for and the cash you have available. But anything that has a physical presence and a retail space, definitely look at franchise resales as the cost to build out and permitting times aren't going down. There are a lot of entrepreneurs that kept on taking SBA funding, whether it's PPP, Idle, Restaurant Revitalization Fund. I think a lot of these businesses are going to be pretty stretched thin. So it's a good opportunity to potentially buy a business from an owner who maybe was too stretched out, financially or operationally. and you can get in right away. If you want to get a really super deal, the business might be losing money and you've got to turn that around.
Right.
Or if you're investing, 150, 200K plus, most likely there's cash flow. And from day one, you can get some money. Do keep in mind that when you buy a business, it's common for the revenue to drop 10, 15% in the first year with that transition and
Mhm.
then scale up.
Especially if you are buying into a business that already exists, you're paying a little bit more to have that instant, you've got your partners, you've got your clients, the customers are there. So it just seems like a smart decision rather than trying to grow it and doing the build out and all of that.
And some parts can be like identifying a franchise brand you're really excited about and letting people know. Because if you don't voice your intention, it's like I have a friend who's late 30s and he's single and he lets me know, he lets everyone know he wants to meet a nice girl.
Mhm.
So that's top of mind. There is a nice girl, my wife's friend, whoever, I'm going to think about him. So if you don't voice your intention, if you don't let people know and say you enter into a franchise system, if you don't let people know you really want to grow and you're talking to other franchisees in the area, they're not going to approach you when they're thinking about selling. Mostly franchisees will go to the franchisor or franchisees around the area first before they list on the site like Biz Buy Sell or through a business broker. So if you're not in the know and you're not making your voice heard, the chances of finding great deals are going to be less and less.
That's such good advice. So smart. You've done over 1,000 interviews with franchisees. So, what is one benefit and one negative that you've heard that they might feel about the franchising system once they get in it?
A good question. One, I guess, benefit that I think they overlook is the power of their relationships with other franchisees. That shared learning, and ideally the franchisor is the one cultivating it, where information flows up to the franchisor and then product development flows back down because they're cultivating all that information and sales strategy, marketing strategy, et cetera. But also just like one-off relationships. I had a client that his first customer came from a franchisee in adjacent territory in the real estate property management sector that was kind of tapped out. She was later in her career. So he got his first management contract as a referral from another franchisee, totally financial, or it could be like exchanging ideas of how to work on your business, not in your business, and kind of more high level. That's the biggest benefit that talking to franchisees 1 to 2 years into the system, they really appreciate.
You know what? This afternoon, I got asked to speak with, there's a group of really new owners in my franchise system. And they just reached out and said, can you just give us some ideas? So I have a call with them later and I'm like, sure, I'll tell you whatever I can. And I love that because people did that for me. We all
Yeah.
help each other. So 1,000% I agree. That is my favorite benefit.
People are really willing to open up within the same franchise system. And then I think even across systems, you have a shared experience at the end of the
Yes.
day where you're a franchisee, there's a franchisor. At times, every system there's tension.
Right.
It's like being married. And it is really a marriage between the franchisee and franchisor.
Yeah.
Um, and almost all the times they work, you work through the problems. And then going back to your question though, I would say on the negative front, it would be misalignment in terms of what the franchisor quote unquote said they were going to offer and provide support with and what they were getting in return. There's a conflict on how franchises are sold. Oftentimes there could be an outsourced franchise sales organization. There could be just a franchise development person that's in-house at the franchise brand. There can be a franchise broker involved. They want you to do well, but they're getting compensated on the sale and not how you perform. So
Yeah.
it's really important to work with someone that's trustworthy and understand how prior people they've sold to have done and ask those questions and try to connect with some of their prior placements to understand how happy they are in that role, whether that's an outsourced franchise sales organization, the franchise salesperson,
Right.
the franchise brand, or the franchise broker. Get some actual testimonials to see how they've done because you have that conflict where the person selling is not the person servicing you.
Mhm.
And the person servicing you, it's generally the director of operations, whatever title, depending on how large the franchise system is, you could have been oversold.
Mhm.
And sometimes you're not oversold, but you have selective hearing and you cling on to the things that they said and you magnify it. And that happens as well. So try
Yeah.
to get things in writing and vet that information with existing franchises.
Do your research, talk to so many people before you go in, and know too that like in a 10-year contract, a lot can change. So you can sign on with a franchisor and things will change that maybe you're not as happy with down the road. So that's just always going to happen too. Keep that open communication and just know what you want. I love that.
Yeah,
Um,
and don't be like a Debbie Downer, and people don't like people that are negative, and whether it's with other franchisees, and Scott Greenberg wrote a great book, The Wealthy Franchisee, and it's a lot about just mindset, and the most successful franchisees really have a different mindset
yes.
on how they go about their business, how they treat their employees.
Mhm.
So, you got to look yourself in the mirror.
Yeah.
And the franchisor, oftentimes, they don't want you to fail. They don't want you to close. That's going to hurt them on the franchise fees they collect because they're not going to be able to sell more franchises and they're not going to get that royalty from you. So
Right.
they want you to do well and put a smile on your face and push through, especially in that first year or two.
I agree. And my franchisor is wonderful. And I keep my head down and I smile and I'm happy to talk to anyone they want me to talk to. And they've written 2 or 3 press releases about me going from TV into this franchise and now starting my second act success business. So, how wonderful of them to do that for me.
I'm part of entrepreneur organization where it's for business owners, and I meet with a forum once a month, and it's 8 other business owners, and it's all confidentiality, and it's about sharing your best 5% and your bottom 5%. And that helps a lot, and it's all about experience. It's about what your experience was, what their experience was. With franchising, there is an incredible potential with that, but you have to first build that trust. And I
Yeah.
do encourage everyone that goes into business ownership to have that, whether it's a group like entrepreneur organization, with a business coach, or it could be with one franchisee or a cohort of franchisees.
Great advice. So, tell us about your book then, How to Buy a Franchise Employee to Entrepreneur in 12 Weeks. So, tell us about that and what we can really learn if we run out and grab it today.
It's essentially a 12-step process. Every week there's a focus area, and it was a culmination of 10 years of work in the franchising space and dumbing it down based on interviews with thousands of franchisees, franchise executives, suppliers in the industry. Week 1, what are your goals and objectives in life? 2, how are you going to finance this franchise? Are you going to get an SBA loan? Is it all cash, friends and family, rolling over your retirement savings? There's a lot of different options on financing the franchise. Week 3, your trusted advisors. So who's going to help you? If you bought a home without a broker helping you search and schedule all the meetings, you just went on Zillow and contacted the seller directly, you're probably a better fit contacting the franchisors directly.
Mhm.
But if you used a broker to find a home and represent you, a real estate agent, then you're probably a better fit working with a franchise broker to help you guide the search and schedule all the calls on your behalf and help you throughout the process. So non-negotiable, I say, is the franchise attorney. And then I list other trusted advisors that you could work with / should work with.
Mhm.
And the initial franchise search, checking the franchise criteria, initial calls with the franchisors, deep dive calls with franchisors, because it's dating. You don't just go right in to ask all the financial questions on the first call.
Mhm.
It's better in the second or third call. And then validating that information collected with franchisees in week 8, your local market research. So I imagine, Shannon, maybe you didn't know how difficult it was going to open up in New Jersey as being like the first one,
Mhm.
and understanding like, are there like competitors in the area? So you don't have to have crazy education, and it can be like, oh, we're like this concept, but we differentiate this. And they're like, oh, okay, I know that. Like, I'll sign up, instead of like having them educate all about STEM education and the benefits. So local market research is key.
Yeah.
And then week 10, going back to secure that financing, whether you chose to work with a loan broker or directly with an SBA lender or financing professional. And then week 11, the franchise attorney is negotiating the franchise agreement. And then week 12, you sign the agreement, and then you plan to do the initial training, whether it's 1 week or up to a month with the franchisor, and try to get that business open as fast as possible. Or if it's a franchise acquisition, you take the keys and you're going in and you're running the business.
Your book is really a tool book for someone who is really ready to jump into this world. That's fantastic.
You ready to jump in? Or it's like, I had a friend from college that I talked to who he's not going to do it in 12 weeks. He's going to take a year, and he's seriously considering franchising, but he's also looking at buying an existing business. 12 weeks is pretty accelerated. We're
Yeah.
allocating, 20 hours a week to this process. But if you don't have that time and you're fine bringing the process out, that's fine too. And the
Yeah.
book can really serve as a good tool to go about whatever you're looking to get out of business ownership.
And how can we work with you in your business? So if someone is listening to this podcast right now and they're like, okay, I'm sold. I really want to buy into a franchise and start a business that way. What kind of services do you offer at Vetted Biz to help with that?
So right now at Vetted Biz, we don't have any plans to go in the consulting space. When we first launched, we were doing some consulting for franchise brands, suppliers. Right now, it's really just a subscription as a service, a SaaS model where you can start 2 free trials. You get access to limited information, but 7,000 franchise profiles, and then $79 a month. You get a lot more information, contact information on the franchisors, earnings, average unit volume, all that information. And if you don't like it, it's a 7-day free trial. So no harm. You sign up for the free trial. If you're getting value in those 7 days, you stay on. But there are people that drop off, as maybe they only need it for a very specific franchise brand, and they got their initial value, and that's great too.
Really, it's knowing your numbers before you jump in. So the fact that you have all that information ready to go and just available is huge.
Advisors are there to help you and
Mhm.
steer you in the right direction, but it's your life, so own it and understand the numbers, understand what you're getting into. If you don't understand the P&L statement, you really want to learn that before you sign a franchise agreement. The franchise system is only as good as the other franchisees.
Mhm.
And as we were talking about, that is one of the biggest benefits you get from a franchise system. You should be impressed by who the other franchisees are.
Patrick, such great advice and so much good that you are putting out into the world for potential franchisees and really helping franchisors too, because you're attracting people who are interested and it's really just helping the whole franchise industry, everything that you're doing.
Yeah, I would love for the franchise success rate to go up
Mm.
and educate people on the benefits of a franchise, and for everyone to go up with the rising tide. But to do that, people need to understand what the best franchise opportunities are and which ones they should look over based on their historic track record, whether it's SBA loan defaults or the resale value doesn't make sense for the amount of money you invest. So pass on those opportunities and have people invest in businesses that they can make a nice livelihood.
Right. And you offer such great free resources too. I mentioned earlier your YouTube channel, which is fantastic and has so much good stuff, and your podcast as well.
Yeah, franchise findings, our blog too. So a lot of the content's based on a long form article, and then I do a video and strip out the podcast episode for that. And that information we have no plans to put behind a paywall. So it's out there. We produce a lot of free content, and if we can help you, great. Enjoy the content that we're producing. And for any franchisees listening, franchisors, we're always looking for additional content and insights. That's what fuels most of what we go after, are either anonymous suggestions or just directly from a franchisee that's giving insights, whether it's the profitability of the franchise or other factors.
Nice. So where can everyone connect with you? What's the best place?
I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, Patrick Findaro, Findaro. And you had mentioned also our podcast, Franchise Findings, YouTube channel, Franchise Business Opportunities by Vetted Biz, and then vettedbiz.com.
Wonderful. Oh, thank you so much for sharing so much good information. I could talk to you all day, Patrick. So thank you so much for being on the show.
No, thank you, Shannon. Really appreciate it.
My thanks to Patrick for all of these tips he shared. As a franchisee myself, I appreciate how honest and upfront Patrick is about the franchising world. He truly wants you to be educated and have all the information to make an informed decision. Patrick really gave us the pros and cons of the franchising world, and he gave us great advice on how to open a franchise business with the step-by-step plan that he lays out in his book. I will link to all of this in the show notes below this episode, or you can learn more at secondactsuccess.co/podcast. Another special thank you goes out to you for spending some time listening and joining me today and trying to educate yourself a little bit about what is out there for you, because the world really is your oyster and it's up to you to figure out what path you want to take. I will be back later this week with another Second Act success story. This time it is Lamore Bergman Gross. Lamore was a leader in the tech world before she left her corporate job to work as an advocate for women who want to enter this male-dominated industry. She really is doing such amazing work, helping, coaching, leading other women who find themselves maybe a little lost being in this mostly male-dominated field, and she wants to change that. It's a fantastic conversation, and I really can't wait to share it with you. So you will hear all about her remarkable career story on the next episode of the show. Until then, make it a great one, my friend. Thank you for joining us. I hope you found some gems of inspiration and some takeaways to help you on your path to Second Act success. To view show notes from this episode, visit secondactsuccess.co. Before you go, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss a single episode. Reviews only take a few moments, and they really do mean so much. Thank you again for listening. I'm Shannon Russell, and this is Second Act Success.